At his brother's wedding, my husband slapped my hand away and hissed, "Don't embarrass me, you're just a baby carrier." I stood there frozen, surrounded by laughter, music, and people dressed in joy, while my heart cracked silently in my chest. I felt 1,000 eyes on me, none offering help, just watching as I smiled through my tears like a trained puppet. But what no one knew was, the next speech was mine. And I wasn't going to hold anything back. The truth I had buried for months was about to echo through that wedding hall. If he thought I was just a baby carrier, he was about to learn what I was really carrying inside me, every wound, every lie, and one explosive truth. The music swelled through the wedding hall, violins dancing with soft jazz, while laughter echoed like bells across the marble floors. Everyone was glowing, faces lit up, champagne glasses raised in endless toasts, camera flashes freezing perfect moments in time. And in the middle of all this celebration, I stood beside my husband, 7 months pregnant, quietly holding his hand, thinking maybe, just maybe, today he'd look at me like I mattered. But I was wrong. His brother, Ryan, had just finished his vows. The crowd erupted in applause, and the officiant signaled the next moment, the couple's walk back down the aisle. I instinctively reached for my husband's hand again, wanting to join in the joy. That's when it happened. With a sharp flick, he slapped my hand away. It wasn't hard. It wasn't loud. But it was cruel. He didn't even look at me. Just leaned closer with clenched teeth and hissed under his breath, "Don't embarrass me, you're just a baby carrier." My ears rang louder than the music. My hand froze midair for a second before I quietly dropped it to my side. The words sunk like knives in my chest. Just a baby carrier? That's all I was to him now? My eyes scanned the room. A few people had noticed. One older woman across the aisle caught my eye with a confused frown. But no one said anything. The celebration moved on like nothing had happened. Everyone was too busy smiling, cheering, drinking, dancing, while I stood there, broken, invisible. I forced a smile. Not for him. Not for the cameras. But because if I didn't smile, I would scream. And I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not here. Not now. So I smiled through the tears welling in my eyes. The salt stung, but I blinked it away, pretending everything was fine. I watched as the newlyweds posed for pictures, people circled around them, gushing over how beautiful the bride looked. Meanwhile, I stood at the edge, belly heavy with life, heart heavier with grief. And in that moment, something inside me snapped, not in a messy, dramatic way, but in a quiet, still way. Like the final thread of a rope finally giving in to years of tension. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. I looked at my husband. He laughed at something his mother whispered into his ear. His smile wide, his stance relaxed. He didn't even glance at me. He had no idea what was coming. Because the next part of the wedding, the toasts, was about to begin. And one of those toasts, one of those speeches, was mine. He thought I was just a baby carrier. But tonight, I was about to carry something else, a truth so sharp it would cut through every fake smile in this room. And when I took the mic, there'd be no going back. Ours wasn't a fairy tale romance, but it felt like one at first. We met at a friend's engagement party. He was charming, well-spoken, confident. The kind of man who could hold a room with just a look. I was quieter, the observer in the background, never the loudest voice but always the one who noticed the details. He noticed me too. Or at least, I thought he did. He made me feel like I was chosen. Like I was special. In the early days, he'd surprise me with flowers, long walks, late-night calls just to hear my voice. He used to say things like, "You make me feel grounded," or "You're my peace." And I believed him. When he proposed, it wasn't with a grand gesture. It was in our tiny apartment, with takeout boxes and mismatched socks, but it felt real. It felt right. Our wedding was modest, full of laughter and close friends. I remember standing beside him, thinking, this is the man I'll build my life with. And for a while, it felt like we were building something beautiful. We moved into a cozy place, shared lazy Sundays, made future plans on napkins during breakfast. I supported his career dreams, encouraged him through job interviews, stayed up late helping him rehearse presentations. I believed in him even when he doubted himself. And when I found out I was pregnant, my whole world shifted. I was scared, yes, but also filled with a strange kind of joy. I imagined late-night feedings, baby clothes, lullabies. I imagined us becoming parents together. I showed him the test with trembling hands and teary eyes. He smiled, briefly. A quick, distracted smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Wow," he said. "Okay." I brushed it off. Maybe it was shock. Maybe he needed time. I convinced myself not to overthink it. But as the pregnancy progressed, things began to change. He stopped talking about baby names. Stopped asking how I was feeling. I'd spend hours decorating the nursery, and he wouldn't even notice. My back ached, my feet swelled, and I still cooked his favorite meals, still folded his shirts with care, still waited up when he came home late. I'd mention the baby kicking, hoping he'd place his hand on my belly, hoping he'd smile. But he'd just nod, distracted, as if I was describing the weather. He never yelled. Never cursed. But silence became his weapon. He grew colder, distant. And I kept making excuses. He's stressed. He's tired. It's just a phase. I told myself I had to be strong. For the baby. For the marriage. I read every article, every parenting book. I joined online forums, watched videos on newborn care. I was trying, really trying, to make everything perfect. But no one tells you how lonely it can feel to grow a life inside you while the person you love grows further away. I would lie awake some nights, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he still loved me. Wondering if I was enough. And then I'd place my hand on my belly, feeling those tiny kicks, reminding myself, this child was my reason now. My hope. My heartbeat. Still, I never stopped hoping he'd come around. I thought maybe once the baby arrived, he'd change. Maybe then, he'd look at me the way he used to. Maybe he'd see not just a mother, but his partner. His wife. But that hope was dying, little by little, day by day. And on that wedding day, when he slapped my hand away and called me just a baby carrier, I realized something painful but clear. He hadn't changed. He had simply stopped pretending. The days leading up to the wedding felt like a blur of colors, lights, and endless arrangements. His brother was getting married, and it was all anyone could talk about. The house was filled with people, family members coming in from different cities, cousins laughing in the hallways, elders sitting with checklists and matching outfits. There was chaos, but the kind that usually brings people together. But somehow, I had never felt more alone. Everyone else seemed to have a role. The mother of the groom oversaw the decor. The sisters-in-law took over the dance practices. The groomsmen coordinated every detail. And me? I was just there. People smiled politely at me, asked about the baby, offered chairs and snacks as if I were fragile furniture. Some even spoke to me in that tone people reserve for children or the elderly. Careful, don't stand too long. Are you drinking enough water? You should rest more, sweetie. No one asked what I wanted to do. No one asked what I could do. I had once been so involved in family events, always in the center of the planning. But now, they'd quietly sidelined me, treating me less like a part of the family and more like an observer. A placeholder. They didn't say it outright, but I could feel it. My only role now was to be his wife and someone's soon-to-be mother. Nothing more. The night before the wedding, as everyone else laughed around the dinner table, I quietly slipped away to our room. I sat down at the vanity, opened my makeup pouch, and stared at my reflection. My face looked fuller than before, the pregnancy glow slightly dimmed by exhaustion. My eyes had that constant tiredness that never seemed to fade. I picked up the eyeliner and started drawing a soft line across my lid, steadying my hand carefully. I wanted to feel like myself again, even if just for a moment. I wanted to feel beautiful. He walked into the room, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt, phone pressed between his shoulder and cheek. I turned slightly, waiting for even the smallest reaction. Nothing. He didn't glance at me. Didn't compliment me. Didn't ask how I was feeling. He grabbed something from the drawer and turned to leave. Just before stepping out, I heard him laugh at something someone said on the phone. The sound of that laugh, so casual, so effortless, hit harder than I expected. It was the kind of laugh he hadn't shared with me in months. I sat there, blinking at myself in the mirror, unsure whether to cry or continue applying mascara. The next morning was even worse. As the groom's family got ready to head to the venue, I walked down the stairs slowly, holding my belly for support. Everyone looked busy, scattered with urgency, yet no one asked if I needed anything. My husband stood near the car, surrounded by cousins, talking and laughing. I waved slightly to catch his attention. He looked at me, just for a second, and then turned away. He didn't offer his arm. Didn't help me into the car. I had never felt more invisible. That was the moment I understood, I wasn't part of his big day. I wasn't part of his world anymore. I was just someone who came along for the ride. But I was there, watching. Remembering. Absorbing everything. Because one day soon, when I found my voice again, they were going to hear me. Every single one of them. The wedding venue sparkled with fairy lights and music. Laughter echoed across the decorated hall, clinking glasses, camera flashes, and rose petals scattered on the floor. Everyone wore their best. The groom beamed with pride, and the bride glowed with joy. It was their moment. Their celebration. And we were just supporting characters in the background. I stood near the back table, adjusting my shawl, trying to ease the weight on my swollen feet. I could feel the baby shift slightly. My body was exhausted, but I had managed to put on a smile, curled my hair, even chosen earrings that matched the embroidery on my dress. I had done all I could to feel part of this day. But I was already fading into the background. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the speeches. One by one, friends and family took the mic. They toasted the couple, shared childhood stories, and made people laugh until their stomachs hurt. The room was filled with love. At least for them. My husband stood beside me, arms crossed, nodding politely at every speech. He hadn't said a word to me in over an hour. When it was his turn to speak, someone handed him the mic. He cleared his throat, smiled at the crowd, and said a few charming lines. Everyone clapped. He looked confident. Polished. Like the perfect man. As he walked back, I reached out to gently touch his arm, just a soft, loving gesture. A reminder that I was still here. That I was still his. But he pulled his arm away sharply. In front of everyone. He didn't whisper. He didn't hide it. Instead, with a smile still half plastered on his face, he leaned in and hissed, "Don't embarrass me, you're just a baby carrier." Just a baby carrier. Time stopped. The clapping faded into a distant hum. The chatter around us blurred into white noise. The lights dimmed in my vision, as if someone had taken the warmth out of the room. I felt the ground beneath me turn unstable. My lips parted slightly, but no words came out. My hand dropped slowly. I looked around. Some people had noticed. A few guests glanced in our direction, clearly witnessing the moment. But no one said anything. No one stepped in. No one even reacted. They looked, and then looked away. As if I was invisible. I blinked, holding back tears, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. My heart thudded so loud it echoed in my ears. I could feel it, this deep, aching sting spreading through my chest. But I smiled. Not because I was okay. Because that was what I had always done. Smile. Stay silent. Be small. He walked away, leaving me standing there, with a forced expression stretched across my face and my soul cracking silently behind it. I wanted to scream. I wanted someone to see me, really see me. I wanted someone to say, "That's not okay. She doesn't deserve that." But no one did. I was surrounded by people, yet I had never felt so painfully alone. I turned slightly, clutching my belly, whispering softly to the life inside me, "It's okay. I've got you." And as I looked up, I saw the microphone still resting on the table. My name was next on the list for speeches. My hands were trembling. My mind spinning. But deep down, something inside me shifted. This time, I wouldn't smile. This time, I wouldn't stay quiet. They called my name. There was a soft clap, polite and short-lived. Most people expected a generic toast. Something about love, about family, about blessings for the newlyweds. They had no idea what was coming. I walked slowly toward the front. My heels clicked lightly on the marble floor, my hand resting protectively over my belly. I could feel every eye on me. Curious. Disinterested. Some distracted by their drinks, others glancing at their phones. Except one. My husband. He looked relaxed at first, leaning against a chair with a slight smirk, as if he expected me to say something sweet and harmless. As if he still believed I would play my part. As if I was still the woman who'd let herself be silenced. I took the mic. I didn't smile. I looked straight ahead, into the crowd, and let the silence breathe for a second longer than comfort allowed. Just enough to make people shift in their seats. Enough for hearts to start wondering if something was off. Then I spoke. When I married into this family, I thought I had found not just a husband, but a home. I believed in him. I supported him. I stood by him when he had nothing, when he doubted himself, when no one else believed in his vision. I was there. The room fell quiet. Forks stopped clinking. Murmurs died out. I continued, voice steady. When I found out I was pregnant, I was scared. But also overjoyed. I thought we'd finally enter a new chapter together. That our bond would grow stronger. That I would matter more to him, not less. Some people exchanged looks. I glanced at my husband. His smile had faded. His posture had changed. He looked tense now. But what followed, I said softly, was months of silence. Cold shoulders. Ignored doctor visits. Missed milestones. No late-night cravings runs. No comforting hand when I was throwing up. Just absence. A woman near the back let out a quiet gasp. I was told to smile, to be understanding. That men don't always know how to express things. So I gave him space. I gave him patience. I gave him everything. I paused, swallowing. And tonight, during one of the happiest celebrations in this family, when I reached for his hand, he pulled away. I took a breath. And told me not to embarrass him, because I'm just a baby carrier. Gasps rippled across the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. I just told the truth. I'm not sharing this to shame anyone. I'm sharing this because silence protects no one. Because women like me exist in every family photo, standing quietly, doing everything, while being seen as nothing. A hush blanketed the hall. No one moved. No one smiled now. I looked straight at him. I carried your child. I carried your burdens. I carried this marriage longer than you ever did. And from today, I carry myself. My voice never shook. My legs did. But I stood tall. I handed back the mic. People still stared, unmoving, stunned. He didn't meet my eyes. His face had gone pale. Jaw tight. That perfect image he had built, shattered in a moment of truth. I walked back to my seat, my back straight, my heart pounding like war drums in my chest. I wasn't just a wife. I wasn't just a baby carrier. I was a woman with a voice. And now, they had all heard it. For a second, the room was frozen in complete silence. You could hear the clinking of a single fork being placed gently on a plate. But no one moved. No one spoke. They were processing what they had just heard, every word, every layer of pain, and every ounce of strength that had been poured into that mic. And then, somewhere from the back, someone clapped. Softly at first, hesitant. But soon, another followed. Then another. Until the entire room was clapping. Not politely, not out of formality, but as if something inside them had shifted. It wasn't just applause. It was recognition. It was respect. A quiet storm of validation for the voice that had been silent for too long. I didn't smile. I just breathed. A woman I barely knew walked over to me. Her eyes were moist, her lips trembling as she held my hand and whispered, "You're brave." I didn't know what to say back. I just nodded, too full to speak. A younger girl, probably not even 20, came forward and wrapped her arms around me without saying a word. Her hug said enough. Around me, people weren't gossiping. They weren't whispering in corners or exchanging judgmental glances. They looked at me like they finally saw me, not as the quiet wife sitting in the shadows, not as just someone's partner, or someone's mother-to-be, but as a person. A whole person. I looked across the room and saw my husband still sitting, stiff as a board. His face was drained of color. That casual arrogance he wore like cologne had faded. His hands were clenched. His jaw tight. He tried to look anywhere but at me, as if he could still avoid the truth if he just refused to meet my eyes. And then, without a word, he stood up, adjusted his tie, and walked out of the hall. No one stopped him. No one chased after him. His departure didn't even create a ripple. The man who once commanded all the attention had just vanished from the room and no one cared. And I? I stayed. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like hiding. I didn't feel the need to shrink into the background or pretend I was okay when I wasn't. I didn't need to apologize for taking up space. I was no longer just someone carrying life inside her. I was someone who had reclaimed her own. Later that evening, I stepped out of the hall for some fresh air. The night was cool, calm, almost poetic in its timing. I placed a gentle hand on my stomach. The baby kicked softly, and I smiled, really smiled, not for show, not for someone else's comfort, but because I felt peace. I had done what my heart needed, what my soul had begged for, quietly for months. The stars above blinked like tiny reminders that the universe always watches, always listens, even when no one else does. And as I stood there, breathing in that stillness, one thought echoed clearly in my mind, louder than any applause, more healing than any hug: if being a baby carrier means being strong, selfless, and human, I'll proudly be one. But I will never carry his disrespect again. And in that moment, I walked away, not broken, not bitter, but whole, fierce, and finally free.